Benjamin Kirby Tennyson is the son of Carl and Sandra Tennyson. They are a loving family and only wish the best for their only child, never pushing him to stride down a path he didn't want to take. Growing up, Ben would often care much about himself after his best friend JT left his side to become friends with the school bully, in order to be on the opposite sides of the fellow students' fists. He would usually keep to himself, spouting insults about others even though he truly meant the opposite, especially when it came to his cousin Gwen. One summer, when he was 10 years old, Ben would join Gwen and his grandpa Max on a summer they'd never forget. While at a campsite after deciding to take a walk and get a break from his quick-witted cousin and his grandpa's unusual cooking, Ben looks to the stars for help and wishes for anything to take him away from what he believed would be the worst summer ever. Just then, what seemed to be a satellite crashed down in front of him. The curious 10-year-old would investigate the large crater left by the former shooting star and would soon realize that he just witnessed something unearthly. A pod from an unknown origin opened up before him, revealing an alien device that stuck itself upon his wrist. This watch-lock device contained 10 DNA samples of creatures located far beyond his region and allowed him to transform into them, thus changing his life forever. Ben grew close to his alien forms, and although they were only just simulations of himself, he began to name them, thinking of the aliens inside his watch as beings of their own personality and will. The events of Tourist Trap stay the same, but instead of unlocking the megawatt DNA later in his life, Ben unlocks it immediately after he blast traps the aliens, then reverts to Ben and dubs his new form Buzzshock. Kevin 11. While visiting New York, Ben couldn't contain his excitement to explore the city. He gets into an argument with Max and rebels, heading out on his own with Gwen quickly following behind. Ben befriends an 11-year-old boy named Kevin, who has the ability to absorb matter and energy. Ben is quickly influenced by his new friend, and is pressured into stealing a video game. The two enter a chase with Ben turning into Stinkfly to protect Kevin and escape, using that experience to ignite a not-so-friendly friendship. After Kevin figures out what Ben can do, the young hero immediately regrets his decisions, when his new friend absorbs the Omniiverse's power and adopts an even more destructive nature than he had before. Ben saves a train that is placed in danger by Kevin, then is rescued by Gwen and Grandpa, and fills them on the situation. Ben seemingly defeats Kevin with forearms, before being tricked, causing Kevin to absorb the watch once more, which causes a wave of energy to separate the two, with Ben going off with his family, and Kevin running into the shadows. Although he was wrong and learned his lesson in the end, Ben can still feel the thrilling excitement of being in somewhat vigilante among the streets. Just like in the Prime timeline, Max is injured as Forearms battles Rojo, who then unwillingly allies herself with Vilgax, using the alien's technology to go after Ben. Deciding to take matters into his own hands, and believing he's a danger to his family, Ben goes after the gang leader himself. The final fight in the episode ends the same, with Ben using his Galvanic Bechamorph form upgrade to thwart Rojo, but this time with brutal force, letting his anger and emotions get to him. After the fight, Ben returns to his family, recalling his events, of course, not telling them what he did to Rojo, informing them on his vision of Vilgax. The events of Lucky Girl stay the same as they are in the original timeline. Hex is introduced, and Gwen obtains the mystic charms of Bazelle, becoming Lucky Girl. At the end, instead of Gwen destroying the charms, it's Ben in a desperate attempt to save his family. Although deep down beneath the surface, there's jealousy, not being able to say it, but Ben believes he is the one and only hero of the family. Vilgax the Conqueror arrives on Earth to retrieve the Omnitrix. Much like the previous couple of episodes, the events of Secret stay the same, except for the ending, when the self-destruct sequence is initiated and Ben escapes the ship just in time. He leaves Vilgax in a worse condition than he had before in the Prime timeline. The events of Ghost Freaked Out would stay the same as well. On a tour of Bancroft Academy, a school in which Gwen wishes to attend, Ben can't get over his nightmare from the previous night about Ghost Freak, when he begins to see the alien wherever he goes, following him like a shadow. When the circus freak arrives to school, Ben arrives on the scene with intent to transform into Heat Blast, but instead is turned into his ectonorite form, causing Ghost Freak to take control. Once the circus freaks are violently defeated, Ghost Freak flees the scene as the Omnitrix times out, begging not to be locked inside the device again. Once Ben transformed back into his base form, it's revealed that he and the ectonorite are now separated. From there the battle begins and ends with the same outcome, Ben seemingly destroying his Ghost Freak form by pulling down a curtain inside the clock tower, exposing the alien to sunlight. After accidentally unlocking the master control function of the Omnitrix, Ben is attacked by an amalgamated Kevin. The events happen as in the prime timeline, except Vilgax of course isn't present. Grandpa Max uses the null void protector and pulls the trigger, blasting it at Kevin, sending him to the horrific prison dimension. After this experience, Ben will grow a confidence in himself like unlike before, feeling as if he could achieve anything and didn't need the help of anyone else, not even his family who helped him along the way. Ben and his cousin are thrown into the future by a 30-year-old Gwen. They learn about a future version of Ben who has cut himself from his family and barely even reverts to his human form, as he's become a world-renowned superhero 24/7. Ben and Gwen team up with themselves and defeat the future versions of Dr. Animal and Vilgax. But unlike in the Prime timeline, where Ben looks at his other self as a jerk, this version of the hero idolizes Ben 10,000. In the end, Ben 10,000 regains his touch and humility, seeing just how arrogant and selfish his younger self has become, and warns him about the mental dangers cutting himself off can cause before sending them back to their own time. Ghost Freak returns, with Ben using his werewolf, mummy, and Frankenstein-like aliens to go against the threat. The fight escalates, and Ben finds himself battling against the Ectonorite in space. When Gwen opens up the space shuttle revealing the sunlight, in this timeline, Ghost Freak possesses Ben's body in a desperate attempt to survive. Realizing his plans are thwarted, the alien forces Ben to transform into his Ectonorite form and tries to kill the boy's family. Max defends Gwen as long as he can, waiting for the Omnitrix to time out, as his grandson uncontrollably and brutally attacks him. The alien device eventually times out, locking Ghost Freak inside the watch once more. After these events, Ben regained the use of his Ectonorite form, but refused to transform into it, with the fear that the alien would take over his body once more. The Tennysons would go on to have many adventures, from finding the Fountain of Youth, meeting the creator of the Omnitrix, and eventually going against the -10. Now 11 years old, Ben is back on the road with his grandfather and cousin during weekend trips, and has unlocked new alien forms such as Artiguana, Waybig, Spitter, and Feedback, who he favors the most. From the events of the Rooters to the death of Feedback all stay the same, with Ben's personality becoming more arrogant than before, so much that he feels more connected to his alien forms than his family. But one day that would all change when a mutated galvanic mechamorph named Malware entered his life. When the Omnitrix begins to malfunction, forcing Ben to become stuck in one of his alien forms each week, Grandpa Max takes his children to Galvan Prime, home of the creator of the alien device, Asmon. This would be Ben's first encounter with Malware. Soon after the Omnitrix was fixed, the galvanic mechamorph would attack the planet, calling Ben into action. The events after Trouble Helix would stay the same up until the death of Feedback. After the traumatic loss of his conductoid form, Ben enters a low and sadness point in his life, believing his mistake defined him as a hero. Meanwhile, an alien race known as the Hybrid put their plans in motion ahead of time. The dying race was becoming more desperate as days go on, bringing multiple alien species to extinction as they were, not wanting to die alone in the universe. This plan included taking care of anything they saw as a threat to ensure their victory. One of these threats being Max Tennyson. They sent multiple xenocytes to track, hunt down, and kill Max, but the retired plumber proved to be a force not to be taken lightly. The DNA aliens would soon corner and execute Max one day on his way back to his RV, the Rust Bucket. This event would alert Ben Tennyson about the oncoming threat, causing him to rethink his decision about taking off the Omnitrix, and instead avenge his grandfather's death. Little did Ben know, his journey was only just beginning, and with the hybrid invasion closing in on Earth, his world would soon change and nothing would ever be the same again. We jump ahead, 4 years later, and now 15-year-old Ben Tennyson has decided to dye his hair black, as he uses his grandfather's tricked-out motorhome as the headquarters for his superhero operations. Taking influence from a possible future, he utilizes his Accelerate form to race around the state and even the country to enact his superhero duties, sometimes charging those who are in need of his help. Unlike in the Prime timeline, because he never parted ways with the Omnitrix, after its recalibration, Ben was allowed to keep all the previous forms that he unlocked and acquired prior to the update. If she wasn't focusing on school, his cousin Gwen would also assist him whenever she could. One of those assistants being a mission to intercept a weapons deal between the Forever Knights and the aliens. which was being held by their old enemy and still member of the Rooters, Kevin Levin, with help from a Magister-rank plumber named Labrid, who was also on the case. Ben uses a new form he named Swampfire and takes down Kevin, while Gwen and Labrid fend off the Knights, but some still get away with the weapons. Afterwards, considering that he was never paid, Kevin joins the group and follows along as they go after the Forever Knights, like in the original timeline. They defeat the Forever Knights and the robotic dragon, with Ben using Echo Echo. After destroying the weapons, Ben unwillingly kills Labrid, as his sonic abilities accidentally damages the alien suit which allowed him to survive on Earth. After the Magister's death, Ben, Gwen, and Kevin continue the mission, where they sneak aboard a hybrid ship and destroy their weapons, which catch the attention of a hybrid commander, thus entering a fight. With Kevin getting Gwen off the ship, Ben in his Vaxorian form he dubbed Humongosaur, fights the commander, but fails and is informed on the alien's plan to sterilize all life within 5 miles, due to the hero's interference. After witnessing the destruction of a hospital, Humongosaur destroys the ship and causes it to crash before falling himself and ending up in a large crater before reverting to his human form. Feeling regretful about what happened to the hospital and Magister Labrid, knowing that all those deaths were in a way his faults, Ben states that he wishes to continue his grandfather's mission and put a stop to the hybrid invasion. Gwen agreed, but Kevin does not, witnessing how destructive Ben was, knowing the hero could have done more to stop the hybrid, and decides to depart with them after handing off Labrid's badge. Ben gets a signal from Magister Labrid's plumber badge, and out of curiosity, follows the coordinates to a farm outside of Bellwood. He finds a Pyronite hybrid named Alan, and recognizes Alan as one of the Rooters, causing a fight between the two, quickly realizing it was a trap to lure him once Kevin arrives as well. Kevin, of course, knowing Ben's mission due to their team-up before. The police arrive and Ben aids Alan escape, noticing that he's just a kid, and he reminds him of himself when he first turned into Heat Blast. Ben questions the two about their plan and why they made crop circles in the cornfields, but the two Rooters have no idea what he's talking about. They investigate and find a hybrid weather machine, but are also confronted by both the police and the DN aliens. While Kevin and the police were stuck in suspended animation by the DN aliens, Ben tells Alan that it's up to them to take down the tower, but Alan feels as if he can't do it. After 5 years of being a Rooter, he'd never been the best fighter on the team. Empathizing with the young boy, Ben transforms to Heat Blast, giving Alan a quick lesson on Pyronite abilities during their fight. Ben then switches to Swampfire, then he and Alan take down the weather tower. Even though he's an enemy, Ben congratulates Alan on mastering his abilities, but Kevin counters, stating that they better not get a habit of teaming up, as he is still the coming storm. After Ben receives a message from Grandpa Max prior to his death, warning him about what was coming, Ben and Gwen seek out the plumber kid to add to their team. This episode stays the same, except in Kevin's absence. Ben becomes suspicious and figures out Darkstar's plan due to Gwen's sudden infatuation with him. In the end, Ben defeats Michael and destroys his plumber badge. In the Prime timeline, the hybrid kidnaps Gwen's brother, Ben Tennyson, in order to lure out Max out of hiding, but since this version of Max is dead, that obviously wouldn't happen. Ben wouldn't know about the hatchery unless Ken had been abducted, so in this timeline, the hybrid's plan of shipping xenocytes across the country would come into fruition. While visiting a fishing spot where Grandpa Max used to take them, Ben and Gwen meet their Anodite grandmother, Verdona. They learn about Gwen's alien heritage, and Verdona offers her granddaughter to depart and head with her to Anodyne. With her parents agreeing with whatever decision she chooses, Gwen talks to Ben with her cousin, saying that it would be cool at least to learn about her powers, and she might owe this opportunity to herself. Gwen knows Ben can take care of himself and trusts that he has what it takes to recruit the plumber's kids, but still feeling as if she should think things over. Verdona forces her granddaughter to embrace the Anodite within her and destroys her body. Ben enters the fight, but his grandmother in her true form overpowers him, and the two Anodites leave Earth. To keep their facade of being the plumber's special ops, the Rooters are sent out to put an end to a Tekadon robot's rampage, but are interrupted by Ben, who finishes the fight. After defeating the robot, Ben heads to Mr. Smoothie's for a means of celebration. The course of the episode stays the same, except for the fact of Gwen's absence. JT and Cash wreck Kevin's car and grab the Tekadon glove afterwards, leading to JT to warn about Kevin about his friend's new power. Ben finds out what happened to Kevin and laughs in his enemy's face before going to fight his old bully, which ends with Ben as Chromostone nearly killing Cash. Up to this point, Ben has met and acquired dragon DNA and traveled through time, but once the incursions approached him to retrieve their princess, he decided to use the form he's been holding off on, Alien X. Ben had accessed the forum once before, when he cycled through the Omnitrix's new playlist in order to see what new powers he now had, but vowed to never use his transformation again after the trouble he had reverting back. Deciding to access the forum anyway, he takes the risk and enters the debate with Serena and Umbilicus, while the incursions figure out a plan to get Princess Atea from 7-7. While debating, Ben convinces his other personalities to give him full control over Alien X, while they debate as much and as long as they want. They agree and give their voice of reason full control over his celestial sapien DNA, allowing Ben to save the Earth from the incursions, and the incursions from Princess Atea. The events of Alone Together and Good Copy Bad Copy stay the same. Discovering they have a common enemy, the Rooters and Ben begin to work together to prevent a hybrid from invading. After all, the Rooters were still plumbers, and Ben had a job to do. One night, Kevin and Ben partner up to track down the location of a hybrid and their fight begins. The two do their best to fend off the alien, but it eventually escapes. Ben walks away with a black eye, not knowing his parents witnessed him utilizing his powers. The next events play out as they do in the Prime timeline. Ben is grounded and continues to find a way to fight, but is caught by his parents at each turn. He is contacted by Kevin, who went out on his own after the hybrid, causing him to go against his parents and go after the Rooter. Ben helps Kevin with the DNA aliens, then fights the hybrid, who quickly overmatched him, but is then defeated once the hero's parents arrive on the scene to help. They realize the alien hadn't been beaten. When Ben's parents try to defend their son, they are immediately killed by the hybrid, causing Ben to enter a raging state and kill the alien himself. After the death of his parents, Ben felt as if he had nowhere to go. Gwen was off on Anodyne, Grandpa Max was gone, and the entirety of humanity's safety is resting on his shoulders alone. Ben gets a distress call from the Null Void by the Rooters, in need of assistance as a new threat has risen and taken over. The events of Voided stay the same, with some obvious changes. After Ben helps the Rooters defeat Dr. Animo, Cervantes then understands just how useful Ben could be to them, alive than dead. Taking advantage of the boy's loneliness and recent losses, he offers Ben to join the Rooters and be a part of their family, with Ben then accepting his role as one of them. After Galvin Prime was destroyed by the hybrid, back on Earth, Ben is approached by Professor Paradox and Azimuth, who then warn him about the war that is quickly approaching. After being given complete master control over the Omnitrix and all of its functions, Ben leads the Rooters, Darkstar, and their old friend Cooper into battle against the hybrid. Much like in the original timeline, Ben uses the Omnitrix to revert the DNA aliens back to humans, giving Cooper the idea to create the repair guns. The war is then ended with Ben fusing the DNA of every hybrid in the galaxy with a random species in the Omnitrix and repairs their genetic damage, which causes the Omnitrix to reboot and give Ben a new set of aliens. Everyone goes their separate ways, very satisfied with their win, with Ben returning with the Rooters, but little did they know, the hybrid affected the Earth a lot more than they realized. Ben's ultimate enemy, Vilgax, makes a return to get his vengeance on the Watchwearer. After years of collecting weapons, building his arsenal, conquering worlds, and then defeating the heroes that defend them, and absorbing their abilities, Vilgax decides it's finally time to take his revenge on Ben Tennyson. Back on Earth, Ben is continuing to do what he'd been doing before, protecting the Earth in his Grandpa Max's name, albeit in his own way, beginning to slowly stray away from the hero's path, with a part of him enjoying the pain he brought onto his enemies. While Ben is off with Kevin, preventing an awakened hybrid with a failsafe to destroy all life on the planet. Cervantes gets a planetary defense alert warning him on Vilgax's arrival. Not wanting to use his most valuable asset, he sends the rest of the Rooters to deal with the threat. After Vilgax defeats the Rooters, Ben gets word of Vilgax's arrival, and he and Kevin meet up at the Rooters' headquarters in the No Void. Kevin explains that in order to win this fight, Ben would have to get an upgrade and suggests that they hack the Omnitrix, with Ben agreeing. After Asmund's warning, Cervantes finds out what they're up to and orders Ben not to proceed, but the teenager doesn't listen and decides to just hack the watch himself, which results in the same outcome as the Prime timeline. Ben's aliens get loose with the wearer losing Asmund's trust, and Kevin becomes amalgamized. After recapturing his lost transformations, Ben meets Vilgax on the battlefield, and the two commence the Conqueror's challenge, which ends up with Ben nearly ending Vilgax's life. Vilgax embarrassingly submits just before Ben could kill him, and leaves Earth, with Ben becoming famous around the world due to the challenge being broadcasted on all channels of the planet. The events of Ghost Town stay partially the same. Vilgax crash lands on Earth, seeking help from Ben and the Rooters after Ghost Freak, also known as the Scare, invaded his planet. Much like in the original timeline, Ben doesn't let his friends in on his plan to trap Ghost Freak back inside the Omnitrix, and once he does, the alien realizes the changes within Ben, a form of terror that wasn't there before when he was a child. Ben and the Ectonorite make a sort of symbiotic deal. As long as Ghost Freak doesn't try to take over his body or anyone else's, the Ectonorite could be as free as he wanted during the transformation's activation, whether it be on purpose or not. After stealing an incomplete Ultimatrix core from Galvin Prime, Albedo creates the Ultimatrix and returns to Earth, teaming up with Vilgax to destroy Ben once and for all. Albedo sneaks inside the Rooters' headquarters, posing as Ben, who was supposed to be present for a training exercise with the rest of the team. After taking out the Rooters one by one, Albedo returns to Vilgax, taking them as prisoners to lure out Ben. Cervantes informs Ben on what happened, and the two head out to find Albedo and Vilgax to put an end to the madness once and for all. Unlike in the Prime timeline, Ben manages to defeat Vilgax without destroying the Omnitrix, then defeats and kills the alien, recalling the times he either tried to kill Ben or take his powers. The boy was over it all, and quite relieved that he was truly gone, but hadn't noticed during the final battle with his ultimate foe, Albedo had escaped, still in possession of the Ultimatrix. The events of Hit 'Em Where They Live mostly stay the same as well. After his aunt Natalie dies from the hands of Charmcaster, Ben realizes that along with her are Zombozo and Volcanus, who are out to destroy Ben by killing off his extended family. Going on this mission alone, Ben finds the three villains and goes against them all at once, killing both Volcanus with Big Chill and Zombozo with Ghost Freak yet again. He leaves Charmcaster brutally beaten and barely breathing, letting her live to go off and let any others know that Ben Tennyson wasn't the same kid he was years ago. One night, Cervantes allowed the Rooters to have at least some time to act their age, and on one of those nights, Kevin and Ben bond over a guilty pleasure of theirs and attend a movie premiere of Vampire Summer, starring Jennifer Nocturne. The events stay the same, with Nemesis capturing Jennifer and Ben having to go after her. He humiliates Captain Nemesis during their confrontation and relishes the defeat of his childhood hero, stating that he knows he could beat the Golden Age icon, but feels as if watching Ben thrive as the hero Nemesis always dreamed to be was suffering enough. Considering that the Rooters program was only still in effect due to Ben being present, the team were still plumbers, meaning they had to act as such in certain situations. When a rogue Osmosian named Agrigor appears, rounding up aliens he imprisoned, the Rooters head out after him to put a stop to his plan. In this timeline, once the team is defeated by Agrigor after he absorbs all 5 of the aliens, in a desperate attempt to save the universe, Azimuth grants Ben the new and more powerful Omnitrix, which in this world was now completed before the events of the Ultimate Enemy. The team then searched far and wide across the galaxy and in between dimensions in a race against time to find the 4 pieces of the map of infinity before Agor does, but failed to do so. With help from his alien X form, Ben uses his powers to make their way to the Forge of Creation. Not wanting the fight to end so quickly, Ben doesn't use Alien X in battle, wanting to destroy Agregor slowly and painfully. Ben avoids the chrono randomization barrier, making it even difficult to defeat Agregor than it was in the Prime timeline. Kevin absorbs Ben's Omnitrix, becoming amalgamated again, then defeats Agregor, absorbing his powers as well before killing him. The rest of the Rooters talk him down from absorbing the baby Celestial Sapien's power, and he flies off going on a killing spree, evening the score with everyone who's ever wronged him in his past. After settling a score with someone who owed him money, killing Morg, and nearly killing Audit, Kevin makes his way back to the Rooters in order to absorb their powers and get back at Cervantes for not allowing him to have a normal life, and Ben for being the cause of not having a normal life. With Gwen still on Anodyne, there's no one to help find the humanity in Kevin, causing Ben to step up and face Kevin once and for all. The two battle violently, with Kevin bringing out the brutal side of Ben, causing him to mark a scar on Kevin's chin. The fight ends with Ben using Echo Echo to finally put an end to Kevin's rampage, killing him with a sonic attack. Cervantes' initial goal for Ben returns, seeing how dangerous he's been recently. The cerebral crustacean hybrid then kicked Ben out of the Rooters, causing him to return to Earth and reside in his grandpa's motorhome. Now we will discover just how Ben got recruited into Vilgax's army and what remains of the Rooters. Sometime after killing Kevin, Ben now finds himself alone while on the run from the plumbers. The Rooters have been disbanded, and as their future intentions have been revealed and leaked by Ben after he was kicked out of the Special Ops Group. Now stationed in the Novoid, Cervantes began to plan his revenge on Ben Tennyson. While back on Earth, Ben was dealing with his own problems. It had been a year since he last heard from his old team, and the now 16-year-old was on his own, once again roaming the streets of Undertown. He'd been through many adventures since then, from fighting Luma Redwind of the Tetramans, after being challenged after she found out he was responsible for killing her would-be husband, who he was shocked to find out was Kevin, to meeting an old classmate of his, Billy Billions, who he gladly sent back to Dimension 12. But in the middle of all that, Ben found himself being hunted by a new plumber on the scene, Rick Blanco. The two would fight on numerous occasions before they found themselves being attacked by Kyber the Huntsman during one of their battles. Letting his ego get the best of him, Ben would look down upon Kyber and his pet, stating the knockoff Omnitrix the Huntsman's dog was wearing wouldn't be enough compared to his own. But he was proven wrong by the combined efforts of the Huntsman and his companion, who captured Ben, causing Rook to go after them. After all, capturing Ben Tennyson was his mission, and he couldn't let a lowlife like Kyber get away either. Although, since there were two he was after, this made the situation even harder. They could possibly team up to fight him, so in order to even the playing field, he called in a little help from Gwen Tennyson. Ben would be surprised to see his cousin after all this time. While helping him out of his bonds, she explained to him that she was in the middle of her training, but was in the neighborhood since she had to return to Earth because their Anodite cousin Sunny had been stirring up trouble on the planet yet again. Gwen and Verdona was sent to return Sunny back to Anodyne, and once their cousin was captured, she stayed behind as she heard what Ben had been up to. She didn't want to believe it, but seeing it in front of her eyes, Gwen was disappointed in what her cousin had become, with Ben telling her that she wouldn't understand. The three of them would team up against Kyber, but knowing they wouldn't just let him go free, While Kyber's ship was crashing, he used that as a way to escape, leaving Gwen and Rook to fend for themselves. After this, Gwen would stay on Earth and help Rook bring Ben into custody. In this timeline, because Ben is sort of the antagonist, Gwen becomes Rook's partner and the two would go through most of the adventures the Prime Ben and Rook did in the original timeline, from stopping Troubled rampages to preventing the incursions from taking over several worlds. Ben would also take the role of Albedo in certain situations, teaming up with Kyber of all beings to kidnap Agnes in order to use Agnes' brain to unlock the full potential of the Omnitrix and the Nematrix, which leads Ben to unlocking his atomics transformation. But when he's faced with the opportunity to finally take Gwen out, something inside him stops, and he ends up escaping. Ben's next big adventure would be when he was met by an alternate version of himself known as Eon. The two fought in a devastating battle, but Eon would eventually persuade Ben to his side and recruit him, along with other alternate versions of himself with the same mindset and beliefs, to kill a version of Ben in the Omniverse who didn't have an Omnitrix and rule that timeline. Of course, we know how this goes. The events of this stays the same. This Ben and all the others, except for one, were all erased from existence by Vilgax, who used the Chronosapien time bomb. And in the end, Bad Ben, along with the other counterparts, were returned and was sent back to his own timeline by his no-watch counterpart as Clockwork, who had been using Ben Prime's Omnitrix. The Rooters would eventually return, with Cervantes leading the charge, with the Amalgam Kids yet again, having set in motion his plans to destroy the coming storm that is the Omnitrix ruler, Ben Tennyson. As much thin ice as Ben was on, Gwen and Rook couldn't allow Cervantes to kill Ben, and needed to protect him at all costs. The events of this arc pretty much stay the same, with some differences, of course, the number one thing being that Kevin isn't here. So in this timeline, Ben, Rook, and Gwen team up with the help of Argent to find Cervantes and the Amalgam Kids, leading to Ben almost being destroyed by the non-Balearic chamber, but was saved when Gwen used a spell to break Cervantes' control over the Amalgam Kids, allowing them to decide what they want to do for themselves. They hate Ben for killing Kevin, but they hate Cervantes even more for what he did to them over the years with his experiments and lies, causing them to turn on Cervantes and release Ben. Ben would defeat Cervantes and beat him almost to the point of death before being stopped by Gwen, which leads to Cervantes being able to escape. The Magistrata would show up, stripping the Rooters of their opponent's titles, and as punishment leave them in the Null Void. As the Plumbers were departing, due to his acts today and few various other times where he's helped the good guys, Ben is given the opportunity to serve time behind bars, be rehabilitated, and join the Plumbers once more. Ben declines the offer, deciding to stay in the Null Void and go after Cervantes. This fight made Ben think back on everything he's done up to this point in his life. He was almost completely destroyed on a subatomic level, and the two who he continuously tried to defeat came to his aid. He decided that maybe he was too far gone to become that hero he once was, but knew he had to be punished for all the pain he caused. So he sentenced himself in the Null Void, maybe one day having escaped with a new mindset, although he wasn't betting on it. Gwen states that it's always good to see them, even when he's trying to kill them, but it's fun to be on the same team once again. Calling his cousin a dweeb, they depart with a hug. Ben and Rook sharing a fist bump, and Audrey goes in for a hug, but Ben pushes him away before leaving, while the Plumbers exit through the portal. As he watches the portal close, Ben turns, looking over at the vast and endless space that is the Null World, beginning his search for Cervantes as a way bad roars in the distance. So there you have it, my version of the Bad Ben timeline. I honestly didn't mean to take this long to make the final part of this. I think I kept holding it off because I just got distracted with creating every other video I had made since then, but yeah. Also, I wanted to make sure I created a scenario that I found interesting and made sense. Making this video reminded me of the reason I started this channel, which is to have fun and share my thoughts on topics in the Ben 10 universe and the franchise itself. I'm happy to say that once I started writing this final part, I couldn't stop, and the ideas just kept flowing, which was half the fun of it. Again, there's no history to Bad Ben, and I wanted to find a character who I'd have fun with, and although I was originally gonna do it with Ben 23, I chose this Ben because there's a lot to fill in and discover with him. Tell me what you think your version of Bad Ben's story would end up. Thanks for watching. Have a nice rest of your week, and I'll see you when I see you.